Idaho's racial and ethnic landscape, once uniformly Native American pre-statehood, would evolve drastically in the late 19th century and develop all throughout the 20th century. What originally started as a land dominated by Native Americans would be altered significantly by the arrival of Meriwether Lewis and William Clark, and over the next 200 years, with the influx of white Anglo-Americans, become unrecognizable from what it once was. The region that would become the Idaho Territory started out entirely homogeneous, at least racially. The areas surrounding modern-day Washington, Montana, Idaho, Oregon, and Wyoming were exclusively Native American until the arrival of the Spanish in 1592. Although the many tribes that solely inhabited the Pacific Northwest were culturally diverse and each unique in their own regards, the overall cultural, religious, and racial makeup of the region would remain relatively consistent until the arrival of the Anglo-American explorers Lewis and Clark in the year 1805. This, however, would not just bring upon an endless tide of white explorers, miners, and fur trappers, but would be the very first time a black person would step foot in the Idaho Territory. York, William Clark's manservant and an African American, would enter the region with the arrival of the rest of the expedition. This is significant not only because of the sheer presence of an enslaved African American on the expedition, but is also the first recorded visit to the area by any black person whatsoever. York would, after the expedition, be granted freedom by his master Clark. This was not without difficulty, as Clark in his journals writes about the extensive attempts by York at convincing him and the numerous disagreements that resulted. York would be the first of many, as today, over 12,000 black Americans live in Idaho. Now, white and black settlers were not nearly the only new additions to the region in the 19th century. Gold discoveries, railroads, and logging jobs brought a massive ingress of Chinese American immigrants, most of whom were young men. The presence of those Chinese immigrants in Idaho is a tale as deeply nuanced as it is problematic. According to an 1870 census, over 4,000 citizens of Idaho were Chinese, more than a quarter of the entire population of Idaho at that time. This surprising, lesser-known pocket of diversity would not last long, however, as just over a decade later, the United States would pass the 1882 Chinese Exclusion Act, deporting, incarcerating, and financially ruining tens of thousands of Chinese Americans. Although most Chinese residents of Idaho were essentially exiled, many remained via marriage, property ownership, or lack of enforcement, planting the seeds of a micropopulation of generational Chinese Idahoans. Japanese internment during World War II in the 1940s would shake up the racial makeup of the region yet again, transplanting thousands of first and second generation Japanese Americans from coastal cities to rural areas in Washington, Nevada, Montana, Idaho, and Wyoming. Although many who were incarcerated returned to their original cities, states, or country after the end of their incarceration, countless families found employment, property ownership, and community in the Pacific Northwest, yet again propping up a small yet growing population of Asian Americans in Idaho. Modern Idaho's nuanced racial diversity, often overlooked, has grown and changed with the state itself, forever intertwining numerous ethnicities from around the world into the combined racial fabric of our beautiful state. Although at times troublesome, the history of Idaho's racial diversity is full of positive threads of community, growth, and the spread of culture. Whether you're white, native, Asian, black, Middle Eastern, European, or whoever, history tells us that everyone has a place in the state of Idaho, regardless of what anyone thinks.